Hello, everybody, and welcome to the All Metal Mode podcast with your host, Mr. Michael Hare and Dorian Cook. I know some of you have just been going crazy. I got a lot of emails about the first Jesse James podcast that Dorian did, and we were going to do it the following week, and some things came up, and we are back, though. 2 weeks went by, 2 shows. We had to pass up, and here we are now. So we are going to do Jesse James Part 2, and Dorian has done a ton of work. He's just gotten everything together. He's put a lot of work into this, making sure he's got all of his notes with him and everything else. Another thing, if you're not a member, and I'll watch the group, you might want to go to the All Metal Mode Facebook group because Dorian has posted a lot of pictures and stuff that go along with this. And I will pull up Facebook here in just a minute. Once I give the show over to Dorian, I'll get it pulled up, and I will let anybody that's not a member there, I'll make sure to approve you so you can tune in and tune in over there, and you can see all the pictures and stuff that go along with it. So real quick before we get into all that, if you're looking for the best digging tools for metal detecting and gardening, go to predatortools.com. They build the highest quality and strongest digging tools made. They're made from the finest American-made steel built right here in the United States. Each tool is heat-treated and tempered one at a time for maximum strength, and they are second to none. There are many to choose from, and each has a 5-year warranty. If you need a digging tool that'll last and make the job of digging easier, look no farther than predatortools.com, or you can call Pam at 856-455-3790. And I am telling you, folks, they are the best that I've ever used by far. There's a lot of people, a lot of companies that have tried to. George came up with that original design with the handle sitting behind the blade on the hand diggers, and a lot of people have tried to copy that, and most of them are made in China, if not all of them, not using the same quality of steel, and their tools are just amazing. George builds every one of them. This is a small family-owned business. It's George, his wife, their son. That's the company, and they're just incredible. It's all I use is Predator tools. Dirt Digest magazine, the article, the issue's out. May issue is out, and boy, I had to think for a second, Dorian. Geesh, I'm a little rough tonight. But May issue is out. I think it's another great issue. It always is. We have some great people contributing. Dorian, if you haven't seen it, Dorian writes a monthly column. It's always good, and he's also every month there's a chapter out of his book. Which book, Dorian?
It's the one on John Hunt Morgan, the famous Confederate raider.
Yes, sir.
Terrorized Kentucky. We kind of call him our first terrorist.
Mm-hmm. That's a good book. Good book. You did. All your books are great. I love your books. In fact, I was scanning through one just the other day, looking up some stuff and kind of doing a little research. What else real quick? allmetalmode.com. I did an article on some of the people in the hobby, some of the guys, some of the women that have problems with guys sending just absolute rude comments, pictures, videos. I talked about that because I feel like it's a bigger problem in our hobby than a lot of different places. We have some women. There's a couple that I don't want to. Their name really doesn't want to be out there. I'll put it this way to you. I just had a friend in the hobby sent me screenshots of some absolute disgusting stuff that a guy had sent her. She didn't know him. they never talked. She doesn't flirt with people. She doesn't. Her Facebook posts are always. I've never seen one flirty comment or anything that would make somebody think that she's, and it's a real problem. It is. I know I'm a flirt. I flirt. I'm innocent. It's innocent flirting. It's fun. If it offends anybody, all you'd ever have to do is tell me. I would never send you pictures, videos, do anything absurd like that. Steph constantly tells me since that article was published that I need to go read it. Because I'm often on the phone with Gypsy and Amanda and Joanna and Steph's always there. And I think there's a difference between innocent flirting and some of the stuff going on. But even then, if I ever offended anybody, I'd want to know, and I apologize. But there's nobody out there I've done anything like that to. And some of the stuff going on. Another friend, just real quick, has sent me a lot of screenshots, and I'm talking guys creepy. I'm a big capable guy. I'm a big guy that can take care of myself, and she has sent me messages she's gotten from men that are downright creepy. And I think it's more prevalent in metal detecting than a lot of the other hobbies and a lot of different things you're going to see on Facebook, different groups and stuff like that. I know it's a problem on social media and when you can chat and stuff like that, but I think it's more prevalent in metal detecting. Dorian, you wouldn't believe some of the things I've seen, some of the things that have been forwarded to me and stuff, and it is just downright shameful, and it hurts our hobby. There's 2 women I talk to who rarely post because they don't want attention on Facebook, and they're getting absurd amount of just disgusting messages and stuff, and it really needs to stop. I mean, when you have a woman who is into this hobby and loves it and doesn't flirt, she's married, one of them's married, talks about her husband. I mean, if you've seen her Facebook account, there's absolutely nothing on there that would make you think that it would be okay to send her any of the lewd stuff she gets, and she gets it on a regular basis, and it's through metal detecting. That's what she's on social media for, is metal detecting. But enough of that. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just going to say we're still a fairly new group. We're just a little over a year old, about 14 months, and we have women in the group. But I've never had a complaint. If it's happened.
You're talking about explain to the group.
Oh, the We Dig the Civil War headquarters, yes. our Relic Hunting and Civil War history group. Mm-hmm. We've just never had an incident of that I've ever known about. If the women ever got anything from any of our guys, I would strongly encourage them. All you have to do is let me know, and that person is gone. They are gone immediately. No appeal, nothing. That is just absolutely crossing the line, because I know how bad these kind of problems are overall, but I still believe a Facebook group can be a haven from that, just like we don't allow all the commercial advertising. You can talk detectors and which one you like the best till the cow comes home, but you can't post a link to somebody's sales site, see, because everybody's getting merchandised and advertised to everywhere they go on social media, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm trying to create a little haven where everybody can come to kind of close that out, and we can just actually talk about the things that we like, Civil War relic hunting, Civil War history. And it's worked but we're a small group. I don't know if you can. I don't think it's in the group so much. I would assume guys are scared because of that, like me or you. Like if there was any woman who reached out to me, hey, this happened, this guy from the group did this, I think the guys who are doing this would know how we're going to respond to that. I mean, as far as I know, all of hers are coming in through Messenger, and she probably can't
she probably couldn't track where they found her,
Yeah.
And you can send messages. I don't know if you know this, Dorian. Matter of fact, somebody just told me this. They sent you a message, and that you didn't respond, and I bet you didn't get it. If you're not friends with somebody, there's another place your messages go, and you need to find that and look at that.
Yeah, and I just found it, believe it or not, Mike, right before the show, and saw 2 or 3 that I needed to respond to. One of them was, Joanna, and I've already responded to hers, but I ran out of time. I had to come do the podcast. So, yeah, I'll take care of that.
Okay. Yeah. It was Joanna. So, when you get a chance, do that. But
yeah, she's got a response already. She's, so that's taken care of.
That's funny.
It was a great. Yeah, she sent me a great post, great message. So, all right. Hello.
Oh yeah, no, I'm here. We ready to get into it?
You gotta tell me.
Let's do it. I know I'm done. I'm done with everything. Let's get into it. Go for it.
Okay. All right, everybody.
Here we go.
Check your saddle girth and let's ride out here. We got a lot of ground to cover. This is going to be a little bit of a long show. Got a lot of stuff to cover tonight. And I'm going to reveal a pretty amazing secret that has never been known by the public before about Jesse James and especially the Wichita Mountains that we're going to be talking about. It's been hidden in plain sight in front of the eyes of millions for over 100 years, and nobody has figured it out. So we're going to reveal that tonight. And this will be the very first place in history that it's ever been revealed. So I'm excited about that. But we got a lot of neat stuff. You guys are going to feel like you got an overdose of treasure hunting by the time we get done tonight. I want to talk about the Wichita Mountains in southeastern Oklahoma. The closest town is the little town of Lawton, Lawton. The Wichitas are just west of Lawton, Oklahoma. And they comprise 59,000 acres of granite boulder mountains. And, of course, there's some valleys in between that do have vegetation. But the vegetation is very sparse and scattered up on the mountains for the most part. And they are, I've seen a lot of mountains. Last year I was up at 11,000 foot level in the northern Nevada in the gold fields up there. Near the little ghost town of Osceola. And, the views were fantastic, and I saw amazing rock formations. But the Wichitas have a special place in my heart because I have made numerous trips into this vast wilderness area. And I say it's vast when you're one person and you're walking back in. I want to give you some adjectives to kind of describe the Wichita Mountains, because this is a very special place, and it has more treasure, legends, and stories per square foot than any place in the whole United States that I have ever come across. And if there aren't a number of you who listen to this podcast who don't want to go there at the end of this podcast, I'll be very, very much surprised. Here are some adjectives that would describe the Wichitas. And I would like you, if you don't mind, those of you that are on the All Metal Mode Facebook page, let's go to the supplemental photos, and let's start with part 1 of the supplemental photos. It'll say file 1, and we're going to start with picture number 1. Every picture is numbered, and we're going to go through each one of these pictures, and I want to describe them to you. While you're looking at picture number 1, you're seeing a very, very special mountain in the middle of the Wichitas called Elk Mountain. And I'll be explaining more about it as we go along. But the words to describe this place are mysterious, beautiful, rugged, sometimes intimidating, dangerous, deadly, exciting, awe-inspiring, all of these adjectives fit the Wichitas. And I can see from my experiences of going deep into this mountain range, hunting treasure. I've hunted Spanish treasures that I'll be talking about shortly, because the Spanish were the first known people that came to the Wichita specifically in search of treasure in the form of gold deposits. And there are still a number of a great deal of evidence, a number of shafts that how they did it, I don't know, but they drilled shafts into this solid granite boulders, one of the hardest rocks that there is. And it's not really known how much gold they found or took out, but we're going to be talking about that. But I want to talk first about the rugged beauty of the Wichitas. If you're looking at photo number 1, you're looking at the view from the top of Mount Scott. There is a road. If you look slightly to the left, about left center, you'll see an asphalt road down there in the valley. Well, it winds all the way up to the top of Mount Scott, so you don't have to hike up there. And if you go to the Wichitas, you want to be sure and go up to the top of Mount Scott. Now, the Wichitas, the entire 59,000 acres, is federally controlled in one way or another.
Hey,
it's either a wildlife refuge.
Dennis, or Dennis, I just saw Dennis post in the thing. Dorian, real quick, let me just butt in real quick. I want to say we've gotten some more people in since I said it. If you're not a member of All Metal Mode and you want to see the pictures, Dorian has posted a lot of pictures and stuff to go with this show tonight. If you're not a member, I'm keeping Facebook up in the background. If you want to join the group, just so you can see all the pictures and stuff, make sure you do that. So, I'm going to keep an eye on if anybody wants to join that's not a member. All right. I'm sorry, Dorian. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Let me get my thoughts back together here. Okay. So we want to talk about the beauty because, I'll tell you what, my wife and I actually took part of our honeymoon here in the Wichitas. And I remember one of my most treasured memories was her and I being up here on Mount Scott looking at the very view that you're seeing in the first picture. It is truly awe-inspiring. You're not looking into the Wichitas, you're looking out over the surrounding Oklahoma territory there around it in this view. But we're going to go in now and we're going to look at the Wichitas. Now let's go to pic number 2. And I've got a caption on the top. It says, Treasure Lake and Elk Mountain in the Sharon, actually it's Sharon's, I should have put an S in there, Sharon's Gardens Wilderness Area of the Wichita Mountains. The Sharon Gardens, or Sharon's Gardens area is the most rugged of the entire 59,000 acres. And it has many, many treasure legends, lost mine legends, and other things that we'll be talking about. Elk Mountain that you're seeing in front of you in picture number 2 is suspected to have a very famous treasure site called the Iron Door Treasure. It seems that for the past 150 years, scattered travelers, hunters, people taking shortcuts across the mountains who weren't real familiar with the mountains, stumbled across a big, solid, very thick iron door set into the face of a cliff in solid rock. And there's all kinds of stories and rumors that the Spanish installed this door to protect, it was like a depository or a bank for a lot of their smelted gold. And that when they were driven out by the Indians in the I think around the early 1700s, that rather than try to flee with all that weight, they just sealed it up in places. And certainly there is iron in this area they could have smelted if they had people who knew how to work iron. And the door could have been made and put in. The problem with the Iron Door treasure is simply that nobody who's found it has ever been able to go back to it, and nobody who found it had tools that with them that they could use to open the door. So I suspect that one of the reasons why the door is so hard to see, it's the color of the boulders very close. A lot of the boulders are a rusty red. And if the sun's not shining directly on it, I think it can be very, 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 I mean, actually almost impossible to see from a distance because it's in the shadows probably between boulders. As we go through these pictures, I think you'll understand more how it could happen that it could be very difficult to go back to a specific place if you weren't very, very, very familiar with where you were, if you were not a well-seasoned hiker throughout this area. Let's go now to picture number 3. Here again, now you can see up close in picture number 3, you can see the round granite boulders. And there are boulders bigger than a 2-story house. Those are common. There are little streams like this, spring-fed streams that run through there. And, it's kind of hard to hunt treasure without being distracted by the beauty at any time of the year you're there. Now we're going to go, and what I'm going to do here, if you'll notice in the captions on the picture, I've got the Sharn Gardens Wilderness Area at the top of number 3. We're going to abbreviate that from here on out just as CGW, so you'll know exactly which picture is taken where. And we have a couple of maps we're going to bring up too, and so you'll understand exactly where the Sharn Gardens area is located in the Wichita Mountains. Just bordering the whole Wichita area to the south is a very famous U.S. military installation called Fort Sill. Fort Sill is the artillery, you might say the artillery center for the Army in the whole United States. And when my wife and I were up on top of Mount Scott, we could actually see the artillery pieces firing, and we could see the shells land and explode on down the range. So that was an interesting experience. But anyway, and you would, of course, you're not allowed on the Fort Sill artillery range, which would be foolish to go in there. All right, so, but you have some people that don't mind being foolish, but the Wichitas are not a place to be foolish, because then they can be dangerous and they can be deadly. I will tell you right now that many a skeleton has been found in the Wichitas of ancient travelers. Some were murdered by Indians. Some were, Spanish that died of illness or were wounded and crawled into a cave or something and died. All kinds of reasons why people die in the Wichitas. Some got snake bit. And we'll be talking more about that as we go on. So all of these things can be factors. Now, I want you to go to picture number 4 and look how rugged this is. Can you imagine making your way through this trying to find a specific treasure site? Is this not a place where a person could hide treasure with some reasonable expectation of it not being found? I think it is. Now let's go to picture number 5. And you can see again the big stacked boulders stacked on top of each other, balanced rocks on top of ridges and things. It's pretty common in these mountains. And they do make for some, wonderful eye candy. And that's Elk Mountain in the background peeking out over top of that little foliage. This is taken in the spring, obviously. Now, one of my favorite pictures is the next one, picture number 6. I just love this pic. You see those big giant boulders, they are bigger than houses. Those are granite boulders. So when I say these are granite boulder mountains, I'm not kidding. And when you're up there among them, and I have been in that canyon that you see right over top of that pine tree. I've been up in that area, and it is truly awe-inspiring. And you feel so very, very small when looking at these pictures. You don't get perspective like you do when you're there. And that's why it can be intimidating, because you just feel like such a small, tiny something in this vast wilderness area. Okay, we'll go to picture number 7. and you can see the beautiful streams and the rock formations, and how some of these look like almost like they were carved by man. If you look at the one on the right in this picture, it looks like there's a big seat for a giant there, right in the center, just above the little lake. And then it looks almost like a vertical wall with that big black streak, but that's just a shadow. Shadows can play tricks on you in these mountains. Now let's go to number 8. And there's a balanced rock, and these big rock piles of boulders, they just pop up everywhere. And some of them, there's whole mountains of them. Look at number 9. This is the one of the main roads that goes through the Wichitas. This is an interesting stretch of road. I made numerous trips into the Wichitas, hunting the Iron Door treasure, among others. And I never saw a rattlesnake or a copperhead in all those rocky boulders and mountains where you would think you'd see one every time you took a step. However, on this very stretch of road right here you're looking at, my wife and I were coming, we were staying in a campground there, one of the campgrounds. There's 2. And we were on our way back. It was getting dark, and I've lived in the mountains long enough to know that the snakes start crawling at dark. So we wanted to get out of the wilderness and get back in our car, get back to camp. Well, we got to this section of road right here, and there was a big old copperhead crawling across the road. And we went down a little farther down in that dip, and there was a big rattlesnake crawling across the road. And that's the only 2 bad snakes I've ever seen in the Wichitas. And ironically, with all that Snake Haven looking stuff, I actually see them on the road instead of in the bushes. But anyway, just because I didn't see any in all those trips doesn't mean they're not there, and that they have to be constantly looked for. And we'll talk about the animals that you have to be on the lookout for, because when I said that the adjectives deadly and dangerous apply to the Wichitas, I wasn't kidding you one little bit. Okay, now let's go to picture number 10. This is a trail that hikers walk. I just want you to see what the trails look like. They're not well maintained with natural steps or anything. They just the trails mostly have been made by just people walking, and trying to find the easiest way up the sides of the hills and the rocks and things. Okay, now picture number 11. Again, it looks a little bit almost like a landscape out of a science fiction movie. Now let's go to number 12. Look at this giant rock. This thing is bigger than a 3-story house. If a person were standing in front of it, they'd be about, less than a half-inch tall. And over here on the right, take a look at that bouldered ravine. I have traversed that very ravine. And it can be a challenge climbing over all of the rocks. You have to think about things like, how easy it is to sprain an ankle. What are you going to do if you sprain an ankle? You want to have somebody with you that you can get help, because I don't know. I haven't been there since, we started carrying cell phones. So I don't know if there's any cell service in there or not. But it is something to consider. Okay, now in picture number 12, here you see a young hiker. And look at those balanced rocks. Look how big they are compared to him. And this is not an anomaly, this is a common type thing you're looking at. I could probably have put up 100 pictures of rocks like this, all different, that you see in the Wichitas. Now we'll go to number 13. And there's a rocky gully. You will see quartz veins and seams in the sides of these walls. And for those of you with any prospecting experience, your mouth will practically water and you think, wow, there has to be gold here. And I personally agree with you. There has to be gold, but it's very elusive in the Wichita. So we're going to talk about gold mining as soon as we get done with our travelogue here on the Beauty, and we're almost there. Okay, now in picture number 14, there's another view of the ruckiness, and I think this is a good place to end our little view of the beauty of the Wichitas. On picture number 15, you're looking at sundown over the mountains. Okay, now let's go to number 16, which is our map of the Wichita Mountains Wildlife Refuge. If you look, if you can bring your picture up big enough to see, you'll see that the Fort Sill Military Reservation runs all along the bottom. That's the south end. And you'll see that basically the Wichitas are divided into two parts. The one on your right holds Mount Scott, as you can see where I've designated with the arrow and circle. And it also holds something called the Holy City. And I have not delved too deeply into that for this show, because it's not treasure related, and it was not something that particularly interested me when I was there. I was always wanting to be somewhere else. I had other places in mind. Most of my work on treasure hunting was in the Sharon's Gardens Wilderness area. And by the way, in case you don't know, Sharon was the boatman that ferried people across the River Styx into hell in Greek mythology. So Sharon's Garden, it's referring to the first person that the people who were consigned to hell would see. They would get in his boat and he would row them across to the River Styx, which was the boundary between this world and hell in mythology. So that's where the name comes from, Sharon. All right, now if you look as you come across from Mount Scott to the left, you see the Visitor Center. There you can get all the information you need and so on, rules, regulations, everything. You need to keep in mind this is a national wildlife refuge. You certainly would not be allowed to metal detect without a permit. So that has to be kept in mind. I did not do any metal detecting, and technically to mine any gold you found or whatever, again, you would have to have permits from the federal government. But for all of that, it still is like a magnet. It pulls you. You go there, you want to go back. I got all excited getting ready for this show. I had an extra week, and I really needed it to prepare for tonight. So I apologize that we had to postpone, but believe me, I think it'll be worth it. But because I got a lot more material together and got it organized well, I think, and I can present it to you in a way that'll work. Okay, now there's two campgrounds. One of them is called the Doris Public Campground. They've got full facilities there. They've got a boat ramp into that lake you see to the right. And the more primitive campground is the Fawn Creek Campground, and that's where my wife and I stayed because we were interested in Treasure Lake, which you can see I have marked there on the far left. That is the jumping off place that I would use to go back into the Sharon's Garden Wilderness. There's a great parking area right there at the lake. So these are some of the important sites I wanted to point out to you. And you can see up above to the north of the Sharon Gardens area, it says spatial use area. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's federally controlled, and it means that it's basically for the wildlife. They have herds of buffalo and longhorns, and they have a lot of elk and things, and they don't allow people in that area. If it has other purposes or something they're not telling us, I don't know. But anyway, I assure you that you'll have more than enough territory where you won't feel pinned in. If you, this is an amazing place. All right, now we're going to go to the next map, which is number 17, and I wanted to show you three towns. There you see Lawton and you see Altus, and you see Hobart. And that area in the triangle is the area we're going to be really concentrating on in terms of talking about treasure and gold tonight. Altus is like treasure hunting central for the Wichitas. All kinds of stories, legends, people who moved to Altus just so they could hunt treasure in the Wichitas. Lawton is a little more modern, faster moving city on the main drag. Hobart is not particularly significant other than I used it for the peak of the triangle I wanted to show you. Okay, now we're going to go to number 18. And this is this is an entrance into the wildlife areas where they have herds of buffalo. And we're going to go to the next picture, which is number 19, which there's a herd of buffalo grazing. And you don't want to go close to these buffaloes or say, oh, they look so cute. Look at the little baby. Let's get up close and take a picture. These are wild animals. Wild animals. And here's another wild animal in picture number 20 that you're going to encounter. On my first trip back into the Chardon Gardens area, Mike, I was walking up a trail that other people had made, and it wound its way through these huge boulders. And I was just, man, I was happier than a fat tick on a dog, as they say. You know, I mean, it was a beautiful day. It was a beautiful place. I was excited about finding treasure. And I came bopping around the left side of this big boulder that was about twice my height, at least 12 feet tall in diameter. And I came face to face with this critter in front of you in picture number 20. He was laying down, and I was within 6 feet of his nose. And I froze in shock. And he looked at me, and I thought I was dead looking at that rack. And he jumped up, and my whole life flashed in front of my eyes, as they say. But it turned out I scared him as bad as he scared me. Instead of coming at me, he turned and leaped over this giant boulder and ran away up the hill. So you don't want to have a close encounter like that, but it is possible. So this is why I'm saying danger and deadly. Can you imagine if that thing charged you with its head down and you couldn't get out of its way? And here's another critter, speaking of horns, or things that will stick you. In number 21 here, longhorn cattle, they have herds of them. And again, they are wild. They're not domesticated cattle. Do not go near them. Now let's talk about snakes for a minute. We'll go to slide number 22. Here's an example of how big the rattlesnakes can get. That one's about 8 feet long at least. And you see the sign where they warn. Again, you know, I never had any problems with the rattlesnakes. And I was in very, very snaky areas. So it's not like that, you know, you're going to encounter one every 30 feet or something. But you certainly could encounter one of these critters. The rattlesnakes, they're not wanting a fight unless you corner them up against a rock or you walk right by them where they're curled under a rock ledge or something and you don't see them and they feel threatened and strike. That's the only way you're going to get bit with a rattlesnake. They are not going to attack you, but they will defend themselves. And don't depend on them to rattle. In my entire history, 48 years of metal detecting, I've been in many, many rattlesnake-infested places, and I've only had about 1 out of every 4 rattlers I've encountered that ever gave me a warning buzz. They do not always rattle. But if they are coiled, they are ready to strike. Now let's go to the next slide. These are 2 other critters you got to worry about. Oh, by the way, there's 3 kinds of rattlesnakes in the Wichitas. There is the western diamondback. There is the Masaga rattlesnake, and there is the prairie rattlesnake, and their markings are a little different in colors. They blend in well with their surroundings, so you have to be alert. And here is a typical Wichita Mountain copperhead. Our copperheads here in the Appalachians where I am right now are much redder, much brighter red, rusty red than this one. They also have water moccasins, so anytime you're around water, you want to be careful. The copperheads, they don't like to give ground. They won't come after you, but they do not like to give ground. You have to go around them. They're not going to usually run from you. They're going to stand their ground and dare you to come. And you see how this copperhead is not coiled. He's drawn back in kind of an S shape. He's ready to strike. Copperheads do not coil. Water moccasins are aggressive snakes. They do coil. They will attack if provoked. Sometimes they will run from you and head straight for the nearest water, but other times, if they feel threatened, they will come after you. They will attack you, and they are very, very fast. And they will lay up in bushes chest high or in a tree over your head. So you just have to learn to watch these things. I made many treasure hunting trips into snake country, and I've had a couple of close calls in 48 years, but they were very, very rare because I always stayed alert. Almost always, with one or two exceptions in 48 years, I saw the snakes before they saw me. So you got to learn to do that if you're going to treasure hunt, because we have, the whole state of Kentucky where I live is copperhead and rattlesnake country, and you get farther south in Kentucky, they even have some water moccasins. Okay, now, I want you to look at this next picture. This is the kind of a ledge that snakes like to lay under. I circled a lizard, a big lizard, but it could just as easily have been a rattlesnake. And so you come bopping around this rock, and that snake's right there and feels threatened, you could get struck. So you want to steer clear of hollowed out areas under rocks. You don't want to climb and put your hands above you where you can't see, because sometimes rattlesnakes will lay out on rock ledges to sun themselves. So the whole key is to be vigilant and to make sure you can see where you're going. If you're going to step over a rock or a log, make sure first that there's not a snake laying on the other side. All right. So those precautions, because some of you, the odds are that some of you are going to go to the Wichitas and hunt treasure, at least go to hike and see it because of this program. And I don't want to be responsible for you getting hurt. I want you to go and have a wonderful time. But you have to be alert and aware. All right, this finishes our file 1 on our pictures. And now we're going to talk about gold in the Wichitas. Let's go to file number 2. Look at the post on the heading. It'll say Jesse James in the Wichitas, supplemental photos, file number 2. And let's go to, the first picture is number 25. Okay, this is a claim marker that an old prospector at one time set up in the Wichitas. Now, before we go any farther, I want to read you some history about gold mining in the Wichitas. And then we can build on this history in terms of getting involved in specific instances of gold in the mountains there and what the potential is or what it was. Okay, I'm going to grab a quick drink of water before I start reading this. Hang on.
Hey, Dorian.
Yes, sir.
I was taking care of an issue I had, but I just got back into chat, and Bill said you were a one number off on your pictures.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Just to let you know. But he said it was easy to follow. But anybody else that was trying to follow
Ask him
along,
which way.
Okay. Yeah, well, he'll hear. Bill, which way was he off?
In other words, is picture number 25 It's supposed to be number 25 that shows the stacked rocks of the claim marker. What
Yeah.
number is that picture?
Yep. Give me 1 second. We'll give him a second to respond.
Okay.
But I'm not sure which. That'll give you a nice little break. You're one behind, he said.
Okay, so this is actually picture number 26 then that starts the...
Okay, good deal.
All right. Okay, yeah, I had a computer crash in the middle of doing these numbers, and I thought I got it fixed, but I was off by one. So my apologies.
He said stacked rocks are 26.
Okay, all right.
Super.
Then we can get through it from there.
All right.
Okay, let me go back to reading you the gold history of the Wichitas. Beginning with the earliest European exploration of Oklahoma, mineral wealth, particularly gold, held a special interest. As early as 1765, Spanish mining activity existed in the Wichita Mountains in the southwestern portion of the state. But folklore recounts gold mines in McCurtain County of southeastern Oklahoma, as well as in the area east of present Grand Lake, and even in the Arbuckle Mountains in the south central part of the state. Tales of buried Spanish gold abound, ranging in location from the Great Salt Plains in the western part of the state to the forks of the North and South Canadian rivers near Eufaula. Even Jesse James reputedly buried some of his stolen gold at various spots within the state. Well, we're going to be talking a lot about Jesse's stolen gold here just shortly, so hang in there with me. Through the romantic haze of all these golden dreams, the only area of proven gold production lies in the Wichita Mountains. Beginning around 1890, prospectors found abandoned Spanish mine workings and evidence of considerable gold, silver, and copper mineralization in the Wichita Mountains area. By 1895, a full-fledged gold rush was underway in that region, which lay in the restricted area of the Kiowa Comanche Apache Reservation. And I neglected to mention to you when we were looking at the maps, the right, if you look at the maps again later, the first map on the right portion there where Mount Scott is, they call it Medicine Park in that area. And it eventually became it was home for Cochise, the famous Apache chief, and also Quanah Parker, who was considered the last Comanche war chief. His mother was Cynthia Ann Parker, a white woman who had been kidnapped and adopted into the tribe. Fort Sill was also the place where Geronimo was held captive after he surrendered to the U.S. Army. He had his own house. He was given freedom to go all about the area and go into town and stuff, but he was nonetheless was not allowed to leave the Fort Sill area. He did quite well for himself, promoting himself, selling pictures of himself, and when he died, he had something like 16,000 cash in the bank, and that was, in those days, that was a considerable fortune. So old Geronimo had a bit of entrepreneur in him. Anyway, a lot of history for the Native Americans in this area. So it says the U.S. Army and the Indian police fought a losing battle to keep these interlopers, that is the gold prospectors, out. And at that time, and then again in 1901 when the reservation was open to general settlement. Between 1901 and 1910, a massive amount of gold prospecting occurred. More than 2,000 mining claims were filed and a dozen or more small smelters built. Mine shafts ranged from a few feet in depth to more than 200 feet beneath the surface, and reported ore values fluctuated wildly from less than $1 to more than $600 per ton, with estimated processing costs ranging about $5 a ton. Thousands of prospectors entered the Wichitas and a number of towns, including Wildman, Mears, Golden Pass, Craterville, Oriana, Hollis, and Doris sprang up. Sprang up. Granite, with its access to the railroad, served as the main distribution point for men and material. Okay, so you have a lot of gold rush towns. Now, think about what happens when gold rush towns are created and then abandoned. A lot of relics, a lot of coins lost, things like that, because gold rush towns were wild, a lot of drinking saloons and so on. Okay, so we had all this going on in the Wichitas. Anyway, continuing, it says, despite all the time and money put into it, gold mining in the Wichitas was doomed to failure. Only isolated pockets of ore had high assay values, and the overall value of the ore per ton did not warrant large-scale production. Further, the surface veins proved to be of small size and quickly pinched out at shallow depths. In its 1916 report on the state's natural resources, the Oklahoma Geological Survey noted that much prospecting has been done in Oklahoma for gold and silver. The search has been carried on for years, and up to the present time, not enough has been found to be of any economic value. It went on to say that many people have been induced to invest in stock selling schemes and fake prospects, that is, fake mining claims, without any returns on their money. Or a prospect can also be a mining shaft that's been dug back into the hill. They call it a prospect. Since the publication of that 1916 report on gold mining in Oklahoma, little has occurred to change its conclusions. Now, I'm going to beg to differ with their conclusions because of one big factor here. You heard how the Spanish were in the area, and you know they were looking for gold, mining gold. And there have been many Spanish relics found, pieces of armor, Spanish gold bars, Spanish implements, swords, things like that, helmets, so on. The Spanish were very, very good at locating deposits of gold and silver. And they didn't waste their time on areas where they could not get much out. And yet they did a considerable amount of work in the Wichitas. Some of their shafts are filled up and sealed, and the only way to know if there's anything in them would be to dig them out. So when you have gold like this occurring in pockets, even the shallow ones, you almost always have a major gold vein somewhere close by. And that is typically called the mother lode. I was up in the mountains of Nevada last year trying to help a prospector find the mother lode of this Osceola gold mining district that's never been found. It's the only mother lode of any of the mining districts in Nevada that's never been found. It's there, and everybody knows it, but nobody's found it yet. And we were hoping that maybe it came to the surface, the vein came to the surface on his property. And it turned out that the property was so rugged and big. He had 15 mining claims, and each one was 8 or 9 acres. And we just could not cover them all in the time that we had to do the work. But we did eliminate a couple of the claims as being the site for that mother lode. So I maintain to you that the mother lode is there in the Wichitas, that it's just not been found yet. Now, I want to talk about the fact that all of this area is under the control of the federal government. I have seen over the last 35 years how every area of the country where there are major treasure stories or stories of lost rich gold mines or silver mines, somehow the federal government manages to get control of all of those areas. It's amazing. Can't be a coincidence. Excuse me. If you look at the national forests here in Kentucky, for example, the Daniel Boone National Forest, excuse me, I'm going to have to get a drink of water here. It's broken up into quite a few pieces, many of which don't even connect. But what's interesting is I can show you a definite pattern I can show you that in every one of those pieces, there have been reports of veins of silver being found. And of course, now they are inaccessible to the common man because they are owned by the federal government. This happens all over the country, so it was no surprise to me that the Wichitas are under federal control. Because although it's never been admitted since right after this country's government was formed, the government has been in the treasure hunting business. Today, they work through the Smithsonian Institute, which everybody thinks is a museum organization, and certainly they have the finest museums probably in the world, but that is, believe it or not, a cover for what they really do, which is treasure hunting. Treasure finding, I should say. A lot of our big famous treasures have been lost to the Smithsonian. I'll call them lost. So the government's not real excited about the common man finding big treasures. So it's almost like, you go into an area and you got hostile Indians and you have to be careful. The prospectors had to look out for them and stuff. The federal government is hostile to small miners and treasure hunters. They are not there to assist or help you. They are there to prevent you from doing very well. They don't care if you pan a few nuggets out of a stream here and there. But when you start trying to locate veins of gold that could produce millions of dollars, well, now that's a different story. And this factors into why the Wichitas, why they would want control of this whole area. Because I'm going to reveal a secret about the Wichitas. Has to do with the Knights of the Golden Circle. And we're going to get into that here shortly. So anyway, you've got an idea that the Wichitas have seen incredible amount a gold rush, and mining towns, a dozen or so mining towns, gold rush towns spring up and then are abandoned. And most of them are totally gone with the exception of a few foundations and this type of thing. And we'll look at a picture of one of the more famous ones here. All right, we're going to go ahead and get back into our pictures here. I want to show just a few things about mining before we get to Jesse James. And I got a lot of stuff on Jesse, so just hang on. It's coming. All right, picture number 27 should be a rock house, an abandoned rock house, built from the local stones, as you can see. So it could have been built pretty cheaply, probably an abandoned miner's house. Somebody who'd planned to, spend years prospecting the area. Now, let's see. Okay. Picture number 28. I got to remember which number I'm on because I don't have numbers on these pictures. Picture number 28 is a cave that legend has a Spanish gold mine in it somewhere, but no one has found it. Now, to the right, the smaller picture, that is what's left of a sealed Spanish prospect or a tunnel going back into the solid granite that they chiseled out. And that all would have been done by hand. They didn't have pneumatic tools and drills and things. So that's quite a feat, but the Spanish could do that. They were hard rock miners without a doubt. So this is some of the things you will run into in the Wichitas. Look at those boulders, how they stacked above that cave. All right, in picture number 29, this picture really upsets me. These two children are in serious danger. That's a vertical mine shaft, probably very deep. You don't want to be near the edges of those. They can cave in on you. You can fall in. I had a hard rock miner in California tell me to never lean over a vertical shaft. He said that if there was heavy gold deposits worked at the bottom of it, or any gold still exposed, that it gives off krypton gas, and that if you get one whiff, it can knock you unconscious and you just pitch right on over into that vertical shaft and fall to your death. He says it's happened to many a miner out there and tourists as well. So, I don't absolutely know that's the truth, but I wouldn't even take a chance. This is not safe for adults or children, and the parent is letting these kids uh, be there that close is irresponsible. Absolutely. Okay, now here's a interesting picture. The next picture here, next 27, 28, 29, 30. Okay, number 30 by Bill's count. Okay, this is another Spanish mine that has been hacked into the granite. You can see some of the staining and so on. Here is another mine. This one was not done by the Spanish. This is an abandoned prospect that's from the gold rush days. Now, if you look at the rock immediately to the right at the very entrance to the tunnel there, you see the veins, see the little white stringers of quartz, and you see the dark reddish rock right above and slightly to the right of the tunnel there. See, that's iron, and gold has an affinity for iron and quartz, and this is why any prospector that saw this would get excited. So that is why they put this tunnel back in there. I don't have any history on this particular tunnel, as far as if they took any gold out of it or not. Okay, the next picture, number 31, I believe it is. This is the taken at the bottom of what they call Bat Cave Mountain. Now, Bat Cave is an interesting place. There's a man with the last name of Keown, Keown, I believe is the way it's spelled, who supposedly found a ledge of platinum in the Bat Cave on this mountain. And I do have a picture of the Bat Cave. I should have had it here next to this, and I don't. Yeah, I do. It's one picture away. Just hang on a minute, we'll get there. Anyway, in the process of mining, he hit water and the water filled the cave, and they tried to pump it out and couldn't do it. So the Bat Cave is still open, but it's full of water, and the platinum has never been confirmed. But supposedly he had samples of really good platinum that came out of that cave. Okay, the next picture, you can see a cave next to this little waterfall on the left up in there. That looks like man-made also. I think that's probably where somebody dug back in. So this stuff is all over the Wichitas. I saw old Spanish mine workings when I was there. Now, the next picture after this one, the black and white pictures, you're looking down into the Bat Cave on the left. And if you look up the top left corner, you'll see part of a boiler that was used as part of a pump system to try to pump the water out of the cave. Now, there's a bar across the entrance, the vertical entrance there, and it's got chain link fence tied to it to use as a ladder to get down into the cave. There's been quite a few people that have gone down in there, spelunkers, whatever, to explore. And, personally, you have to be real careful in an area, especially with rattlesnakes like the one I showed you, because they'll den up in caves, and there could be on these vertical pits, it could be literally a snake pit. You could have 500 snakes at the bottom waiting for you. So you want to be real careful about going into any kind of a vertical situation. You don't want to do that without proper support and equipment and training and all that kind of stuff. It's just not worth it. And the odds of injury or death go way up if you give in to your desire to know what's down at the bottom. It might be you. All right, the next picture shows a group of men and a horse, and they're working a gold mine. This was called the Gold Bell Mine. This is one of the mines in the Wichitas there. And apparently they didn't get enough gold out of it to make it pay. Now the next picture, and I've lost track of the numbers on the pictures because I don't have them here. My computer crashed and it erased. It did not save my numbers. I lost all my numbers on the pictures here, and I didn't have time to go back and put them back and re-enter them. But I'm at the picture that shows a man with a cigar in his mouth, and he's standing by a little smelter that he built. And this is Silas Lee Eisen. He was the last of the old prospectors from the gold rush days in the Wichitas, and that's his homemade test smelter at his home there in the wildlife refuge. Now, in the next picture, this is called an arrastra, a Spanish word. It's an ore crushing device. You hooked up a burro to the pole sticking out horizontally, and it turned the burro walked around and pulled the big wheel over pieces of ore and crushed them so you could get to the gold in them. Now this one's pretty elaborate. It was built on top of a big stone to where it finally, it ate out the stone more or less, or they carved it. I'm not sure which. But the Spanish arrastras look like the one in the next picture. The black and white picture, see the circle of rocks, individual rocks. That's usually about all that's left of the old Spanish arrastras. But if you find one of these when you're hiking in the Wichitas, and I did find one, there's always a mine close by. Always. And if they built the arrastra, then they were getting gold out of that mine, and they were crushing the ore. And they probably smelted it. You may well find the remains of a small smelter close to the arrastra too. All right, the next scene is the old shot of what's left of the gold rush town of Wildman in the Wichitas. Boy, doesn't that look like a great place to swing a metal detector? We'll go to the next picture, and you'll see some of the things that they find in these ghost towns. You see the old bottles. You find picks, gold pans, crucibles, stove parts, and fire bricks are among some of the relics that have been left behind. Okay, now the last picture in file number 2 here we want to look at is an example of a gold mining stock certificate. If you notice down at the bottom, this is a share in a gold mining operation that you invest $5 to get this share. See, capital stock. So it's a stock certificate, as it were, in a gold mining operation. And there were a lot of these. This is just one example. I want you to see what they look like. And these little pieces of paper separated a lot of hardworking people from their money. Pardon me again. Just a moment.
Dorian, you're doing wonderful.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the encouragement.
Good show. Good show.
We haven't got to the exciting stuff yet.
Oh, boy.
All right. Now, I need to confirm, I may still be one off. I did this last file number 3. We want to go supplemental photos, file number 3, for those of you on the All Metal Mode Facebook page. And our first picture I have numbered 42. Bill, is that correct, or am I still one off?
I'm waiting for him. Bill, what number?
Or anybody. Anybody that's looking at the first picture in file number 3, give us a number on it, please.
He said pick is 42, file number 3.
Okay. We're back on track then.
Okay.
All right. So picture number 42. Another black and white older shot of Elk Mountain. It's somewhere possibly in this very picture you're looking at, is the mysterious iron door set in the rock that nobody can seem to go back to once they find it. A number of people thought they could, but nobody's been able to do it over the last 150 years. Now here in pick number 43, I have put a yellow circle around what is probably just a shadow. But again, is it a shadow or is it an iron door? The only way to know is to hike back in there and get up close enough to tell. Could it be the entrance to an open cave? It could be. But that might be what the iron door looks like. You see, sitting in the shadows. Thought I'd throw that in. Now, I think we're ready to get into Jesse James. And it all starts with picture number 44, which doesn't look like much. Now, I'm going to be reading to you out of a wonderful book by Steve Wilson called Oklahoma Treasures and Treasure Tales. And he's done a great job of documenting a lot of facts, but he starts from a wrong premise in the sense he doesn't understand the Knights of the Golden Circle or the part that Jesse and Frank played in them, and therefore he tries to see all of their activities in the Wichitas as simply a couple of robbers hiding their loot from a few bank jobs or robbing a train or something. And there's a lot more to Jesse and Frank's presence in the Wichitas, as we're going to see. But when you say Jesse James and treasure, it inflames people, and they're ready to go find Jesse James' treasure. So we're going to, I promised you in the blurb that you would see treasures that were found and treasures that were lost, and we're going to do that. We certainly are. This is reportedly a map that was drawn by Jesse himself. And there was a treasure hunter by the name of Joe Hunter, who's now long gone, back in the 40s, who came to the Wichitas to find gold and any other valuables hidden by Jesse and Frank James. Now, he managed to decode some of these symbols you see on the map, and eventually would lead him to some outlaw gold, as they call it. But he never knew that the gold that he found, which was a couple of caches, was only a tiny fraction of what was there. And that the reason he found these caches was because the brothers had designed the maps and clues you're going to see to lead intrepid treasure hunters away from the really big treasures they hid there. And so it allowed them to find smaller treasures that had enough value to make them think that, well, this is about right for robbing a train or a bank. And they never understood what they were actually involved in, which was the intention of Jesse and Frank and the other Knights of the Golden Circle all along. Okay, let's go to the next picture, picture number 45. This is called the Buzzard's Roost. The code on the map you just saw in the previous picture ended up leading this treasure hunter, Joe Hunter. Isn't that funny? His last name was Hunter. I think that was his real name, though. It led him to the Buzzard's Roost, and it took him many attempts, but he found here a tea kettle that contained a small fortune that belonged to Jesse James. At least that's the common belief, and in a way it did. But what he had actually found, unbeknownst to him, was a decoy cache. The decoy caches did not have junk in them. They had real treasure. But the whole purpose of them was to keep people like Joe Hunter digging in the wrong place and keeping their attention away from certain areas that the Golden Circle did not want anybody poking around. Now, supposedly, this tea kettle treasure had long been sought by Frank James, who actually moved to the Wichitas, and I'll show you his house and a picture of him about the time, what he looked like about the time that he moved there momentarily. But let's go back and look at this kettle that was found as a result of the map you saw up there. Here is the kettle itself in picture 46. And there is Joe Hunter and Mrs. Belle Headland. They're examining part of the treasure that was inside this pot. Now, what was in the pot? Well, let's go to picture 47. This will show you some of the things that were in the pot. Notice the pocket watch. Why would Jesse, if he was only a bank and train robber, why did he put this watch? Why would you put a gold watch in a pot of treasure? Well, that's kind of a mystery. The gold watch, as it turns out, is actually a witness, as they call it, of who this treasure belonged to. And I'll tie that in with another treasure. Just remember the watch that you're seeing in the picture here. So what you're seeing in front of you was not everything that was in the pot, but this is what they chose to show us. It's the only picture that we have that exists. Now, in the next picture, number 48, this is Tarbone Mountain. It's on the north side of the Wichitas. And Joe Hunter found there a brass bucket on which Jesse James had carved what appeared to be a binding contract, and all of the outlaws' names, as they call them, outlaws, were on this, carved into the name, this bucket. Now, in picture 48, we have a very, very historical picture. Joe Hunter is talking to J. Frank Dalton, whom he's been introduced to by another Golden Circle member as an old outlaw that, quote unquote, had ridden with Jesse James. So Joe Hunter is showing the brass bucket to J. Frank Dalton in this picture with no idea that he's talking to the real Jesse James. And he's showing him the very brass bucket that Jesse carved this contract on. You can see where it's been chalked in. You can see the writing. It's an amazing picture because Jesse was a few months away from coming out. This picture was made in 1948, and it was a few months away from coming out of the closet, so to speak, and reclaiming his identity as Jesse James. I wonder what he would have thought if he'd known he had taken a treasure that Jesse had buried to Jesse to get his thoughts on it, on this contract. I don't think I wouldn't have had the guts to do that. Now, I want to show you in the next picture, number 50. This is a letter from Jesse Lee James written to me. You see my name blown up. And there is Jesse with his famous grandfather and that brass bucket you see in the picture there. I don't know where that brass bucket ended up finally. never thought, I'd never asked Jesse. Okay, now we're going to be getting into some of the details here. But I want you to see these pictures, and then I'm going to read you some stuff out of the book here on the stories. I want you to go to picture number 51 now, and look at the map. See, there's a man's head with a goatee, with a pointed beard, date 1867. And supposedly Frank James spent years looking for this rock. This is the one that was found by Mrs. Belle Headland on her farm. It's very close to Wichita. It's in what's called the Keechee Hills. So this is apparently what helped lead, I said Frank Hunter, Joe Hunter, to part of the outlaw route at Buzzard Roost. The man in the picture to your right is none other than Cole Younger. Cole Younger's name is carved on that bucket. Cole Younger and Jesse were related, and Cole Younger was a very important member of the Knights of the Golden Circle. And I showed you a picture in part one of Cole Younger and Billy the Kid. Cole was 112 when he visited Jesse, who was bedridden by that time and was not far from dying in his 103rd year, I think it was. Those old outlaws, a lot of them lived to ripe old ages, and I think the main reason they did is they had a sense of purpose that kept them going. They didn't have time to be old men. They had work to do, and that'll keep a man going sometimes long. You hear these stories about people retire that have been active all their life, and 6 months later they're dead. And see, they lost their purpose. They lost their reason for getting up, and you think, oh, well, now you're retired, you can do whatever you want. Well, it's not quite that easy, because you have to deal with a sense of loss of purpose. I went through a little bit of that when I closed my business down after 44 years. But I'm an active person, and I had other things to take the place of that business in terms of my time. So now I've got time to do things like this, see? All right. Well, anyway, let's get into some of the treasure here. I want to show you, let's see, number 52. Here's another one of Jesse's treasure maps. This one actually shows the location of 5 caches of gold, currency, and jewelry buried near what's called the Horse and Saddle Cave. Now, Joe Hunter made some progress in deciphering the code, but he never found this treasure. Now, isn't it interesting that Jesse was up there hiding all of these treasures, in that area? Verse 52, this is an interesting treasure map. This is called the, let's see if I can get my Spanish right here, Madrugada Estrella Mapa Oro. And that means early morning star map to gold. Early morning star map to gold. So you see the star on there, and you think, well, that's why Australia is there, and it's not. The name tells you that this early morning star, it may be the North Star, I forget which one you can see very early in the morning. We have one that comes over the mountains, so to speak. It's very bright. But this star that is being talked about is not the star you see drawn on the map. That star is critical to deciphering this map, that early morning star, the direction of where it appears. So that's why the title as it is. Now let's go to picture number 54, and there's Frank James in 1898. And here on the right is the house that he built. And it's halfway, halfway between the Wichita Mountains and the Keechee Hills. Now, why would he build a house right in that location? Why did Frank James, of all the places he could have lived, he's from a big plantation on Kentucky, He's was a degreed, very, very skilled, talented surgeon. Why does he end up there? Well, it's time to reveal that big secret that I was telling you about. All of these small treasures, and we're going to be reading about here in a minute, all this activity of Jesse and Frank James even coming to live here supposedly after Jesse's killed, faked his death. Frank knew his brother wasn't dead. Frank is doing sentinel duty. There was something very, very, very big hidden in the Wichitas by none other than the Knights of the Golden Circle. It may and probably was or is their biggest cache of all the 3,000 that they hid. So everybody's looking at Frank and Jesse as outlaws robbing train and banks, and it doesn't even cross their minds for the last 100 years that all of this stuff and all of Frank supposedly looking for this. Listen, Jesse Lee told me that his grandfather's estate was worth $2 billion at the time that he died. Neither Frank or Jesse James were hurting for money. They were not hurting for money. Frank didn't need to spend years and years and years trying to find, treasure signs so he could dig up one of Jesse's pots full of gold coins, a teapot full or whatever, a brass bucket, and then have money to live on the rest of his life. It wasn't like that, people. It was not like that at all. Frank James was as rich or a rich man. Frank James was there for a more important reason. That was cover. Everybody thought, poor old Frank James, he's just an old worn out outlaw, and he's trying to survive by digging up a little bit of the loot that he and Jesse stole from the banks and trains. And that's fiction. It's fantasy. Everybody fell for it. So nobody's been looking at the real secret, which is all of this was done to distract people away from whatever the Golden Circle put there. I do not have specifics on that cache. I have specifics on a cache in Salado, Texas that has something like 289,000 gold bars in it. I have specifics on one hidden near Brentwood, Tennessee, one hidden in the Valley of Secrets in Colorado, one hidden under a lake in New Mexico. I have specifics on various huge caches. I do not have one. Jesse never talked about the Wichitas. But that's why I'm talking about the Wichitas. What I have just told you, nobody else has ever said. Now let's look at some of the facts and details, and I'll show you, we'll see the pattern in terms of these small caches and what was going on. Because it was to Jesse's advantage if the world saw him as a common outlaw just robbing banks and trains and not an extremely intelligent man that spoke 6 different languages, that was involved in a massive treasure procuring and hiding operation far, far beyond the scope of robbing banks and trains. Jesse participated himself in the bank and train robberies where the prize, as it were, the gold in whatever form, coin or bullion, specifically belonged to Jay Gould, because he and Jay Gould, the great financier that sent the whole world into a depression when he cornered the market on gold in the 1890s, Jesse and Jay Gould were bitter enemies. So Jesse took great pleasure in making Jay Gould hurt by taking money or gold that belonged to him. All right, now let's get into all those maps and things you saw. Let's get into some of the stories about them. Here you go. I'm going to be reading out of Steve Wilson's book here. It's a great source of interesting material, but it's a mixture of truth and error because Steve, not having any knowledge, he doesn't show any signs that he really understood the Knights of the Golden Circle, nor Jesse or Frank's tie into it. So that's going to throw a research author off. See, if you're missing that key piece of information, it's going to skew the way you look at Jesse and Frank. And so what you're going to write about them is going to be a mixture of fact and error. Now, here we go. No treasures has been sought in Oklahoma with the fervor, the dogged perseverance, or the intrigue inspired by the tales of Jesse James' hidden millions in the Wichita Mountains. Few treasures have been sought with such determination anywhere in the Southwest. Much like the Spaniards, wherever the James gang rode, they left their legends of buried treasure. One need but examine the newspaper files of every western middle state between Canada and Mexico, and a few on either side, for an inkling of the amount of hidden booty attributed to Jesse or his brother Frank. If history had not recorded their daring deeds and the trails they rode, legends would show how far those trails stretched across the Middle West and into Mexico. Now, obviously, Jesse James could not have buried all the treasure attributed to him. No, he actually buried more. But of all those reported secret burials over a multi-state area, the rugged range of hills in southwestern Oklahoma has drawn more attention and given rise to more stories than perhaps all the other potential sites put together. And Wilson says, I have woven the legend of Jesse James' treasure. Now, you notice he says legend. A legend is not fact. I have woven the legend of Jesse James' treasure from many different sources, both verbal and written. And although the source of the fabled gold and its final place of burial often vary, all stories lead to the Wichita Mountains and most often begin with the year 1876. Pardon me. Got to grab another drink of water.
Dorian, you are talking up a storm tonight. I don't know how you're managing, buddy, but we're all tuned in and listening.
I managed because I had this extra time to organize it. It's the only way I could do this.
It's a lot, but it's what a neat story. I think it's pretty quiet in chat tonight. I think everybody's tuned in and listening, and nobody's got time to type much or talk much. But
all right,
great, man, interesting. Go back to it. I'll let you back at it.
Yes, sir. Well, we're gonna get right into the heart of all these. I mean, for the next 30 minutes at least, it's all about treasure. So hang on. Okay. Let me pick up my place here. But I want the audience to understand. Look at the pattern. He says, I'm going to read it again and get it, really fix this in your mind and apply it to your future projects. I have woven the legend of Jesse James' treasure from many sources, both verbal and written. And although the source of the fabled gold and its final place of burial often vary, all stories lead to the Wichita Mountains. That right there is a pattern, and that tells you that there's something bigger than these individual little tea kettles full of treasure. There's more to the story. These are the clues that help a professional treasure hunter bust it wide open. You see the pattern there? All stories lead to the Wichita Mountains. Now you see why I picked this subject? Okay. With hammer and chisel, the most wanted outlaw of the West, Jesse Woodson James painfully pounded the letters into the old brass kettle. I don't think he painfully pounded anything. I think he skillfully pounded the letters into the old brass kettle. It wouldn't take much to make a letter with a chisel and hammer on a brass kettle. And it starts out, this 5th day of March, 1876, in the year of our Lord. It was the beginning of, pardon me, I'm going to have to get another drink here. I've got a tiny bit of congestion here. Okay. It was the beginning of a strange contract that was to bind each member of an infamous outlaw band to secrecy about a golden treasure's hiding place. Jesse carefully chiseled the names of 12 deadly outlaws below the contract and then buried the brass bucket and its secret. Now, isn't it interesting? 12 outlaws. That's funny. There were 12 members of the inner circle of the Knights of the Golden Circle. What a coincidence. And by the way, this report about the gold not being there in paying quantity came out in 1916. That is the exact year that the Golden Circle closed down its treasure gathering operations. Now, isn't that a coincidence? Some people might say there are no coincidences. Not like this. Let's see if we can find any more things that smack of a pattern here. Okay, so he chisels the names of 12 deadly outlaws below the contract and then buried the brass bucket in its secret. The place was Tarbone Mountain. You saw the picture of it here just a little while ago. A rough-hewn granite colossus easily approached from the north in the Wichita Mountains in what was then Indian Territory. Jesse James had worked out a clever plan that no other outlaw of his time had devised. It all had resulted from the winter before. Now, let me point something out to you. One of the failings of the Golden Circle is they really failed to grasp that the federal government set out to have its own counter-organization that would find where the KGC was hiding its caches and recover as many of them as possible. Jay Gould was behind it because he was suffering heavy losses from the KGC's operations. So the Golden Circle didn't really grasp. They never imagined that the federal government would move just simply to make the areas where it was rumored that they had hidden their large caches to make them federal land by making them parks or national forests and so on. So they never foresaw the outcome as it stands right now, that the federal government has pretty much effectively cut off the small people like us from ever partaking of all of these golden riches. So, it was a war. The KGC did their thing. They hurt the North, and in turn now the North has kind of hurt them. And the North has recovered some of the Golden Circle caches, not nearly all of them, or not the North, I should say, but the federal government, excuse me. The Victoria Peak out in New Mexico. A lot of stories about treasure. If you want to know more about it, Google Doc Noss, DOCNOSS, Doc Noss, and you can Google Victoria Peak and put the word images, and that will bring up a lot of information. You can follow all the images, have a link. When you click on the image page, it will bring up that image in a new window. And if you look up in either the right or left corner, there will be a link to the site where that picture came from. And you will be able to access the story of Doc Doss and how he got into one of the mega caches of the Golden Circle hidden inside Victoria Peak through an earthquake crack. And how he was assassinated, killed, murdered, after he had managed to get 50 bars of gold out of the huge depository. And I know from inside sources that the Army was using an experimental laser drill. They drilled a tunnel straight into the depository, bypassing the booby traps in the main entrance tunnel, and they removed all of that gold. I do not know where it went or where it is, but I do know that cache, that mega cache, is gone. Uh, I know of 8 mega caches, and the one gone would leave 7, but I suspect was a 9th one in the Wichita Mountains, and that's what we're talking about as we go through this tonight. All right, now to continue. Somewhere in northern Chihuahua, Mexico, not far from southwestern settlement of El Paso, Texas, Jesse and Frank, with 10 members of their gang, surprised a detail of Mexican guardsmen, driving 18 burros loaded or transporting gold bullion. Now, what he doesn't tell you is a burro could carry 200 pounds. So if you multiply 18 burros times 200, what do you have? You have 1,600 pounds of gold. 12 ounces to the pound because gold's measured in troy ounces, not avoirdupois ounces, which is the 16 to a pound. Now think of today's prices. Somebody's got a calculator on their computer. Let's do a little math, and then you can text Mike. Let's do 1,600 pounds times 12. That will give you the ounces. And I know gold this past week hit $1,750 an ounce. So whatever the number of ounces you get, multiply that by $1,750, and then give us the amount of how much money that is at today's. While we're waiting on that, I'll go on reading here. So they basically rob 18 burro loads of gold bullion and get almost a ton of gold. Now, they must have had awfully good intelligence to know exactly when this gold was going to move, you see, and how to hit it. This is not just a bunch of hell for leather outlaws. This is a military operation. It's got the pattern to it. They led the heavy laden pack train across the Rio Grande and over the plains of central Texas. Their destination was Indian Territory, a haven for wanted men and a region already familiar to both Jesse and Frank. When the outlaws entered the Wichitas, they were greeted by a severe winter blizzard. For 3.5 days, they traveled with little rest through snow almost a foot deep. His men were cold and weary, and Jesse knew that the gold had to be buried. And it was now obvious that their exhausted animals could travel little farther. All right, that sounds good, and the average person reading this, they would just assume, okay, this is fact. But there's a flaw in this. Has anybody spotted it? All right, when they robbed this gold, they knew how much gold there was. It was a military operation. They knew where they were going to bury it. There was already a depository waiting for this gold. This idea that, we're caught in a blizzard, we're just going to have to dig a hole somehow, and bury the gold. No, it didn't happen. They made it to the Wichitas and got caught in the blizzard, but they knew where they were going. They were going to the depository. They had a KGC depository waiting and ready for that gold, and this is how they were filling it, by robberies like this, both in the United States and Mexico. After 3 hours of slow, arduous travel east of Cache Creek, Jesse and Frank agreed to bury the golden cargo and burn the pack saddles to warm their chilled bodies. You know what? Burn the pack saddles. There's plenty of wood in the Wichitas. There's all kinds of, dead trees and snags and things that they could have made fire with there, even in a blizzard. See, this is a made up story. I'm not saying the blizzard didn't cause them some misery and slow them down. All right, this is what's supposed to have happened. At the head of a small arroyo, that'd be a small canyon, the band of men untied the packs from the burros and watched as the gold bars sank into the snow-covered ravine. After concealing the Mexican treasure with rocks and boulders and kicking the half-frozen earth off the side of the arroyo with their boot heels, the horsemen gathered around the pack saddles and set them afire. One lame burro was shot while the others were set free to wander. Jesse made two final but lasting signs to the gold. A burro shoe nailed into the bark of a tree served as one. Into a nearby cottonwood, Jesse emptied both his six-shooters for a second mark. They would do until the day when the men could return to plant their gold in a much safer place. If they were that far into the Wichitas, they were at their depository, and that's where that gold went. This story about them kicking, throwing rocks, let it sink in the snow, and throwing rocks on top of it, baloney. If you pardon me saying that, baloney. See, this is where you've got to spot the flaws in the story. You've got to think it through and say, whoa, wait a minute here, you know. Now, I could see if they got caught halfway from, where they robbed the bandit train, they're only halfway to the Wichitas and get caught in a blizzard. I could see some of this happening. But not if they made it to the Wichitas. Because they were not helter-skelter outlaws. They did, everything was planned out from start to finish. By March 5th, 1876, Jesse had made up his mind about what to do with part of the $2 million plus their other proceeds of the gunmen had gathered while terrorizing banks and trains. Let me read that again here. Okay, Jesse made up his mind about what to do with part of the $2 million plus other proceeds the gunmen had gathered while terrorizing banks and trains from Missouri to Mexico. Now, let me say this about Steve Wilson. I appreciate his work. I'm glad I've got his book. It was worth the money. It's an important part of my library. But he writes in what I call the J. Frank Dobie style, or the Louis L'Amour style of purple prose. Purple prose. They gathered while terrorizing. No, they were robbing. They weren't there to terrorize anybody except maybe the North, the northern leaders. That was not their purpose. They were robbing the banks and trains. But see, that's purple prose. Authors will do that to think that it makes their work more readable. Like, at one point he calls them the brigands, and like I said, it's just purple prose. All right. As the ingenious Jesse now carved the contract into the brass kettle, he thought to himself that neither he nor any of his cohorts would ever want for money, if and when they were taken by the law. But if anyone violated the brass bucket pact, that fellow would personally answer to him. With that, Jesse James placed the brass bucket beneath a rock ledge on the side of Tarbone Mountain. But the brass bucket with its secret treasure code was never to be retrieved by Jesse or any of his men, even though several would try years later. Only 6 months later, almost to the day, the notorious Jesse James gang was shot up and dispersed while attempting to rob the Northfield, Minnesota bank. Jesse and Frank were among the few to escape. Finally, on April 3rd, 1882, Jesse James met his death by the hand of a coward in St. Joseph, Missouri. Well, we know that's not true. Frank later stood trial and was acquitted of his past crimes. He was given a pardon by Governor Crittenden, who was one of the 12 members of the Inner Circle, the Knights of the Golden Circle. You bet he got a pardon. But he had not forgotten the hidden gold down in Indian Territory. He was waiting only for the opportune time to return as inconspicuously as possible. This was how Frank chose to be able to go out in public and move around without the Pinkertons constantly being on his trail trying to arrest him or kill him. And that was arranged, like I said, through Governor Crittenden of Missouri, and he was pardoned. So once he was pardoned, supposedly he had to leave Missouri because people there hated him, and there were tensions over the Civil War, and that's all a bunch of hooey too. But anyway, he came to Oklahoma for a purpose, and that was to be, I think, the sentinel for one of the biggest caches, maybe the biggest of all. I suspect, that's all it is my suspicions, but I suspect that it is the absolute biggest of the 3,000 caches, that it's got so much gold in it, it would boggle the mind. I also think maybe that the Golden Circle found the mother lode and that they secretly mined it and cast the gold they mined into bars that went into the cache storage. That may be where a lot of that gold came from. Okay, let me pick up here. Okay, ironically, another former bad man appeared in Wichita Mountains country first, at least publicly. His name, too, appeared on the brass bucket contract. Cole Younger had just completed a 25-year sentence for his part in the Northfield, Minnesota bank robbery. When released from prison, Cole made tracks for the Wichitas. There is a lot of question about whether Cole served that prison sentence or whether a double who was paid $75,000 a year served that prison sentence for him. Because Cole was an important member of the Golden Circle. In December 1903, Younger was in Lawton, Oklahoma, then a frontier boom town, barely 2 years old. Cole was not particular about what he told the press. One paper reported in November that Cole was in Ardmore visiting a relative and planned to visit Dallas and the Texas Panhandle and then return home to Lee's Summit, Missouri, about December the 1st. Cole changed his mind, for on December the 1st, he was in Lawton. Cole Younger was in the city Friday and Saturday with a view to locating, period. Reports have it that he will go into the newspaper business. He was given a reception by the citizens and is pleased with the city, announced the paper. Just how long Cole visited is not known, but apparently Frank was not convinced that he found much. More than 30 years had passed since the border gold was hidden among the bitter winter of 1875, when Frank James made known his return to his old stomping grounds. Now, you saw the picture of Cole Younger beside the bed of Jesse. Cole Younger's there with Billy the Kid, Brushy Bill Roberts, his alias. You saw that picture in part one. If Cole Younger was doing his own thing and violating the contract and was rebelling against the agreement he made with Jesse, supposedly, why would he be visiting Jesse on his bed? Because anybody that violated that contract would have been under a death sentence. Jesse would have killed him. Jesse told his grandson that he'd probably killed 2,000 men in his life. And then after he said it, his grandson said fire came into his old faded blue eyes, and he looked at his grandson, and he said with what's the word, vehemence in his voice, but I never killed anybody that didn't need killing. Okay. So anyway, see, Cole Younger was never on the outs with the Jameses. Never. They were close friends to the very, very end. So Cole Younger was there on KGC business. He scouted out something, and then Frank follows him. You see the pattern? He was there on a mission, and then Frank comes in based on the information that Cole discovered from his visit there. Okay. In 1907, Frank and his wife Ann settled 2 miles north of Fletcher on a 160-acre farm between the Wichita Mountains and the Keechee Hills. The latter, that is, the Keechee Hills, where Frank was later to dig up at least $6,000 of the outlaw loot. Years before, Frank had hung up his guns for a final time. He was no longer the surly, I think this is a typo. I think it was supposed to be the word thorough, surly. No, here you go. He was no longer the surly, though gentlemanly outlaw whom so many had read. Now 64 and balding, he remained soft-spoken and took no pleasure in recounting his past. His objectives he now kept mainly to himself. The news of Frank's purchase of the farm spread fast when papers announced the story in November 1907. Frank was then building his new home and planned to move in during the spring. By the way, that home that you saw in the picture, it's been moved. It's not in the original location anymore. It still exists, but they moved it. Oh, let's see if I can find the information here real quick. Hang on a minute. I need to make it a little smaller. No, I didn't put that in my notes. But we know where it started out. It started out about halfway between the Wichitas and the Keechee Hills, and then they moved it into some little community. So anyway, if you go to see it, know that that's not where he lived. All right. Okay, Frank was then building his new home, planned to move in during the spring. This is 1907. He was also busy helping celebrate Oklahoma's statehood. My grandfather, C.E. Zorger, often recalled the time he first met Frank James. At the time, C.E. was clerking in Blunt Bain's furniture store in Lawton. One day, Frank was in town having a harness repaired. Baines and C.E. were looking outside when Baines pointed out Frank James. At the time, C.E. was incredulous. "Oh, you're joking, aren't you?" He says, "You'll see when he comes back this way. I'll introduce you to him." Sometime later, Frank turned up the street, and Blaines called him into the store. "Frank James, I'd like you to meet C.E. Zorger, a young man in his 70s. My grandfather was..." Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, boy. Yeah, I'm the one in the 70s here. "A young man in his 20s, my grandfather was satisfied that he was meeting the old outlaw himself, weather-beaten and wizened with long years of travel." Just how Frank and Baines had met C.E. was never sure. How Frank and Baines had met C.E. was never sure. One thing he was sure about, Baines was interested in buried treasure too, and even had several instruments made to aid him in the search. On his sandy farmland, Frank built a frame house, worked a plot of ground, planted a grove of peach trees. Just before his mother died, in February 1911, she visited Frank and his wife at their farm. Now, they're saying that his mother is Zerelda Samuels. Frank's mother was Molly Dalton. Zerelda Samuels visited him there trying to get blackmail money. She visited Frank and his wife, and she died in Oklahoma City while en route back to Missouri. And Jesse had her executed because of that, because of the continual blackmail. Threatened to reveal that he was still alive. Okay, now old-timers say that Frank James wore out 6 horses riding the trails, searching for landmarks to put him back on the road to the golden treasure. Well, that sounds, downright romantic. I mean, wow, he wore out 6 horses looking for treasure. No, he didn't. Remember when we talked about the Sentinels? They also had what was called circuit riders. And the circuit riders were given a certain number of caches that they were to continually check on at the rate of 1 time a month per cache. and they would ride from one cache to the other in a circuit. And if they saw any signs of disturbing of the site or anybody trying to, open up a sealed tunnel or anything, then they would go to a telegraph and they would telegraph a code to Jesse or the inner circle. However, they did that. They would get a coded message that there was a problem at a cache site, and Jesse would get a crew of ex-Confederate soldiers, and they would go and take care of the problem. They would kill the people that were trying to dig into the cache site. So if Frank wore out 6 horses looking for treasure, in a sense he was. He wasn't looking for treasure. He was looking to see if any of the sites had been disturbed. He was doing circuit riding. And that would make sense. He was a very important man, so the caches that he would have been in charge of keeping secure would have been very, very large ones. So yes, that's probably true. He probably did wear out 6 horses. Okay. But the country had now been fenced and plowed, and the Kiowa Comanche Apache Reservation had been opened to white settlement in August 1901. Miners had swarmed into the Wichita Mountains to seek their own fortunes. Towns had grown up overnight. New roads were now traveled. The old trails were not called by the names the outlaws had known them. Frank hoped that the old landmarks would help him recall his secluded haunts of 30 years before. The treasure code that Jesse had laid down, and the brass bucket somewhere on Tarbone Mountain. It was one of Frank's day after day rides that attracted the eye of Dr. L.C. Nee, and that's spelled just like your knee, Knee. Dr. Nee was a highly respected physician of early Lawton. While paying house calls near Apache, Dr. Nee observed every day for a week or more that Frank had ridden to the top of a hill about 4 miles east of Apache. There he sat astride his mount, facing south, staring as if in a kind of trance. One day, out of curiosity, Dr. Nee drove his buggy up to the erstwhile bandit. After the usual comments about the weather, Dr. Nee dismissed his manners. I don't want to seem inquisitive, Frank, but why do you sit in that saddle up here for so long just staring at the bald prairie? What is it you're looking for? It is not known, what Frank replied. But not many weeks later that the doctor and 2 local men arrived with teams and Fresno scrapers and dug out a portion of a small canyon. Their search yielded the proper clues, for they had not dug long when they uncovered the skeleton of a burro, and not far away they found a burro shoe firmly embedded in a large tree. But it was their last clue. After spending more than $4,000, Dr. Nee gave up in disgust. So you see, if all that 18 burro loads of gold, that's 1,600 pounds of gold, had never been recovered, they found the burro that was shot, they found the horseshoe in the tree, but they didn't find a trace of gold. It wasn't there. It never was there. Yes, a burro was shot, and yes, the horseshoe was put in the tree to mark the spot, and that way they had a cover story. But the gold wasn't found. And this guy with his scraper and stuff, come on. You got this gold laying all over the ground, the pack saddles, right? They're just laying there on the ground, and you throw enough rocks over them to cover them up in the middle of a blizzard. How many feet of rocks are you going to put on top of those? Not very many, just enough to cover, right? Well, there's no way that the doctor and his crew wouldn't have found that gold if it was there in that arroyo. It's not there. Now, this is interesting. Dr. Nee may have known the old Fort Sill stage driver, Halsey Green Bennett, who one winter day, early in 1876, spotted 17 burros grazing at the base of Mount Scott. For no military animals were allowed to roam that far from the fort, and the animals he saw carried no government brand. And you know what? That might be a clue. This giant cache might just be under Mount Scott, because I turned up pictures of a big gold mining operation on the north side of Mount Scott. There is a big tunnel that goes under Mount Scott. Excuse me. And that may have been a cover. A gold mining operation may have been a cover for the construction of a KGC cache site. Grabbing a drink here. I have not been paying attention to the time. Whoa, we're at 10 o'clock here, my time. All right, we're 2 hours. We're doing okay. Let's see. Let me pick up the story again. Former Deputy Sheriff Jim Wilkerson had been reared on stories of the James boys and their $2 million treasure. He had worked with old deputies who were aware that Frank was seeking part of the outlaw gold in the Wichitas. None of them ever nosed in, Jim once told me. Frank had an understanding with them. Do you know what that understanding was? Frank was a Mason. So were the deputies. Almost all of the deputies I know right now today in our county, I'd say the sheriff and all of his deputies are Masons. And the doctor that Frank talked to would have been a brother Mason too. So you see, whatever we're going to get out of them is going to be doctored, if you'll pardon the pun. The information has been doctored. We're not going to get the straight scoop, but we might get some clues from what they said. Okay. So this former Deputy Sheriff Jim Wilkerson also took a stab at finding the treasure and was not completely unsuccessful in his search. One telltale clue had been overlooked by Dr. Nee. Not far from the canyon in which the doctor had dug, Jim unearthed the rust-eaten buckles from 18 burned pack saddles. I was convinced more than ever that I was on the right track, Jim sighed, but I never found anything more, and I don't think Frank did either. Well, you see, if that happened there and the pack saddles were burned, it's because the gold was hidden in a tunnel or a cache site that they already had. It obviously was not hidden by just being allowed to sink in the snow on the bottom of that ravine. It would have been found. Okay, if you hear a little silence, I'm just catching up on my place here and trying to skip over any fluff that doesn't really tell much about the story. One piece of property attracted Frank James perhaps more than any other. He was known to have studied. Just east of Cement in the Keechee Hills, the farm was the property of a teacher, Miss Belle Headland. In 1907, not identifying himself, Frank inquired about an old spring and some symbols etched on a rock and asked Miss Headland whether he could look over her land. The school teacher was curious and walked along with the stranger as he poked an iron rod into the ground in an inviting spot. She showed him the only spring she knew about, and at the foot of a lone knoll with a natural cave through one side known as the Buzzard's Roost. If this is the right place, this is Jesse's kitchen, the stranger declared, pointing to a nearby rock as he bent down to reach under a stone. Soon he pulled out a rusted spoon. When Frank James revealed his identity to Mrs. Headland, she was momentarily frightened. She recalled later. But as he continued his visits to her place over many months, she found him likable and always a gentleman. And that sounds true to Frank James' character that I know about. As Frank continued his search, he confided in Miss Headland that he was seeking $64,000 that Jesse had taken during a robbery in Independence, Missouri. Jesse had carved a map and directions on a large rock and turned it upside down. That rock, Frank believed, was on Miss Headland's farm near the spring, where the outlaws had camped on many occasions. Frank revealed that Jesse drew a similar map on his boot, later transferred it to paper, and gave it to his mother. Sometime later, Frank found some of the markings he was seeking at the foot of Buzzard Roost. He found the carving of a pair of crossed rifles cut deeply into the rock. The barrel of one pointed east to an aged tree, on which were etched the letters M.O.O. and below the letter Y. Beneath the carvings was a mule shoe nailed into a blaze. I'm not sure what a blaze is. Oh yeah, a blaze on a tree. That's where you kind of cut the bark off like with a big knife or something. You make a big white flat spot on the side of the tree. So the mule shoe was nailed into that blaze. Not far from that tree, Frank unearthed a copper kettle with a crock cover containing $6,000, or so he said. One old settler who was sure that Frank's claim was true was Uncle Billy Royce, who owned the farm adjacent to Mrs. Headland's. Billy Royce had met Frank James once before. He knew that the kettle of loot was not all that Frank was seeking. One day, Frank was in Cement buying supplies. That's the name of a town, not a product. Royce first spotted him. Okay, I missed a comma. One day, while Frank was in Cement buying supplies, Royce first spotted him. He took a double look and hollered out, "Hello, Frank." The old outlaw wheeled around, staring as if trying to remember where he had seen him before. "I'm Billy Royce. We camped one night." "Nuff said," Frank interrupted with a twinkle in his eye. "Could I ever forget that supper you fed us?" So the two men had met almost 40 years before, and so on and so on. Let's see. That evening they camped together. Blah, 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 let's see. They camped with Buffalo Bill Cody. Cody and Jesse James were friends. Let's see. I'm skipping over some of this stuff that's not really cogent to what we're doing here. As Frank and Billy Royce talked about the 40 years that had elapsed since they first met, Frank divulged what he was hunting in the Keechee Hills, part of which, in fact, he believed was on Royce's own farm. It was not long afterward that Frank unearthed the kettle of money. Royce was sure Frank had not found it all, a fact that would later be proved. Now, it's possible that Frank was trying to round up some of the smaller decoy caches and go on and put them in the main depository. This may have been one of the things he was doing. He comes down there and he buys 160 acres and he builds a house, and he doesn't seem to be lacking any funds. So think about that. Okay, now let me stop here just a minute. I think I want to go ahead and show you. Let's take a little break from the reading. Let's go back to the pictures. Let's go to picture number 35. I want to show you, these are all Golden Circle treasure signs in the Wichitas. They've been chalked in so you can see the carvings in the rock better. You see in the first picture on the left, you see a horse. And the idea was that the person finding this sign would follow the horse's nose towards the treasure, the next treasure sign. But you see the broken lead rope and see how it hangs down below the horse's mouth? That is the correct direction to follow to the next sign. This is so typical of Golden Circle. Now on the right is an Indian chief. The Indian chief supposedly points toward the next sign, but that seems a little obvious to me. I think those straight feathers at the bottom of his headdress are pointing the way, or else the line that comes down his back. I don't think the hand is just too obvious. It's designed to lead people away from the treasure rather than to it. Now let's go to the next picture. Here you see the star. The star is the treasure marker, but it's the bottom point that led to the next sign. The next sign was found, and it was the bottom point of the star that pointed to it. Now, the next picture is important because the golden circle really, really, really like to use snakes, especially rattlesnakes. When the rattlesnake would be, let's say the tail is up like in a warning position, that was an indication that ahead was a booby-trapped treasure site. Now you look, here's two rattlesnakes. One of them is carved on the side of a rock, the other one on top. Now you see how the head crosses the body on the one on the left? Well, that would tell any Golden Circle members seeking that treasure that that's not the direction. When the head crosses the body, that's a false direction. You follow the tail to the next sign. These are great pictures to show you what I've said in the past about how Golden Circle treasure signs often had an element of deception to them. Now let's go to picture number 58. This man is looking at a snake carved, the biggest one in the Wichitas. This rattlesnake is 22 feet long. Now look how the tail is sticking straight up in the warning position, the position that the rattlesnakes use when they want to make that rattling noise. You see how very clear that is? And why is the snake so big? The snake gives you an indication of the size of the cache. It's an exceptionally large snake, therefore it's leading towards a main cache. The symbol on your right is the ace of spades, and the point did point to the next sign. Picture number 59 is another rattlesnake. Notice that the head does not cross the body. The tail is not up in the danger position. The tail being up in the danger position on the 22-foot snake, again, would symbolize that it is a booby-trap cache. This snake, however, is simply pointing the way to the next sign. There's no danger between there and the next sign. Now, here's another sign that is actually a Spanish boot, and the point of the boot pointed the way to the next sign. This is picture number 60. Okay, I want to show you one more picture, and then we'll get back to our reading here. This is picture number 61. Here you can see how deeply the snakes are carved into the rock, and there's two of them. And I can't give you 100% certain interpretation. It either means that there's two caches, or else that there's a false trail and a correct trail, that one of the snakes is pointing the way and the other snake's designed to mislead you. I'm not sure if this tail is up in the danger position on the one. It looks like it might be. Can't see the end of the tail of this shorter snake to the left. Anyway, these were found by William Mahan, or Bill Mahan. Now, Bill Mahan, for those of you that are fairly new to metal detecting, Bill Mahan is a historical figure in metal detecting. He founded one of the very first metal detecting companies in the United States called D-Tex, D-Tex detectors. My first metal detector I bought in 1972 was a D-Tex detector. He's holding one of his early models in the picture on the right. That's Bill Mahan. He's got a cache in front of him. Those are gold coins and gold bars and two pistols that came out of the cache. He was able to decipher the snakes and make a recovery. So I'm pretty sure you're looking at some of the KGC gold or quote unquote Jesse James gold. And I do believe that a lot of the funds he got from selling that was used to make his company bigger. As you can see, he's got a metal detector in his hand, and this is where Charles Garrett got his start. He worked for Bill Mahan as an electronics tech before he started Garrett Electronics. So this is an old picture, probably taken back about, let's see, I'd say 72, probably early mid-60s. Okay, now we're going to go back to the book here. But you know what, Mike, are you there? You listening?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I just had you on mute. I had myself on mute. I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right. If the folks, if everybody won't mind, I need to take about a 5-minute break here. Can I take a little break and come right back?
Dorian, we're getting to where we're going to run out of time.
We are.
Do we want to do a part 3?
Let's see how much I've got on this. Yes, we've got enough for part 3.
Do you want? Let's do that because we're at this point. We've got 40 minutes of recording time, and we got 39 minutes.
Okay.
So if you take 5 minutes, that takes us down to what, 32 minutes? I don't know. I can't do math. It's been too late. But yeah, let's do a part 3. Let's wrap it up, and we'll do as long as you're okay with that.
Okay, let's do this. I've got just a few more pictures. I'd like to go ahead and finish them up. I've got about 5 pictures. Let me cover those anyway. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. We'll go to picture 62. This is an old picture of the old corral and the old posts at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. You can see the Wichitas in the background. Thought you might like to see that. This is Fort Sill as it appeared in 1928. And we want to go to the next picture. I wanted to give you an idea. There are, and we'll get into this on part 3. I have many more treasure stories connected with these mountains than just the Jesse James stories. So, when we finish with Jesse, if there's any time left, Mike, we'll just go into some of these other stories. And I know there's a bunch of my relic hunters are listening in, and maybe some from All Metal Mode also. I'll have something for you too. We have quite a bit interesting of military activity against the hostile Comanches and the Apaches, and there were some massacres, and there was battles, and there was camps, and I'll be talking about that after we finish the Jesse James part of the Wichitas. So I think that's a good idea, Mike. I think I didn't really know how long it would take, to go through all of this.
Right. No, that's okay.
We will do that. We'll do a part 3. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, okay, picture 63. This is Cutthroat Gap. It's in far northwest Comanche County, which is the, county there where the Wichitas are. And it was the scene of an Indian massacre in 1833 and a gunfight between miners and homesteaders in 1902. The miners that came into the Wichitas and the homesteaders did not get along. So there's all kinds of a history of violent acts and things that occurred in the Wichitas. That, like I said, there's more stories, that about hidden treasure and events that created valuable relics and lost coins and things per square foot than any place I've ever seen in my life. Okay, now in picture 64, this man is Jay Winters. He was from Altus, Oklahoma. Remember me mentioning Altus? Well, he's displaying a lot of Spanish, Indian, and military relics that he found, or rather that his family found when they lived at the mouth of Devil's Canyon. Boy, doesn't that sound like some place you'd almost want to visit? I mean, doesn't it sound like some place there ought to be some treasure hidden in the mouth of Devil's Canyon on the North Fork of the Red River? So I thought I'd throw that in. And in picture 65, here are the three principal Indian chiefs that figure into the Wichitas. There's Geronimo on the left. In the center, we have Cochise. Both Geronimo and Cochise were Apaches. Of course, Cochise lived there in Medicine Park. That was his home territory. And Geronimo was at Fort Sill as a prisoner. And this picture was posed after he was taken prisoner, by the way, with a rifle. And over here on your far right, that is Quanah Parker, the last war chief of the Comanches. And he was half white. So anyway, I wanted to show that to you as part of the overall history. Now, the last slide I have for you is number 65, or 66, rather, excuse me. This is a picture of the book I'm working from, Oklahoma Treasure and Treasure Tales. And I ran across this newspaper headline. I just thought I'd throw that in to fill out the rest of the slide here. Indians keep watch over fabulous wealth in the Wichita Mountains. William Cooley believes that it is death to approach the treasure. So anyway, that's the kind of press and the kind of things that have plagued the Wichitas, and I mean, doesn't it sound like a great destination, Mike, just to go visit?
Oh yeah, it does. That sounds amazing.
I'll bet you and Dennis find your way up there before long.
I hope so. I hope so. Yep.
Okay, well, that's all I've got then. Until next time, then we'll pick up where we left off there.
I assume this will go over like the last one. I don't know if you got any or anybody reached out to you, but I definitely had some people reach out to me and loved the show and was looking forward to part 2. And oh, sorry, I hit my mic, but it just went over fantastic. And what amazing information. Dennis Wynn said this fall. So I believe he's coming to see you real quick, right?
Yeah, Dennis and I have got plans for the middle of the month here.
I'm so excited for you guys. Now, do you think the fields will still be empty?
Possibly. They haven't done a thing. They haven't ordinarily, but now they have the field sprayed with weed killer, to kill the weeds. But the problem we've got, as far as we can't walk the fields for Indian arrowheads because the weeds are the highest I've ever seen them. Usually there's just a little partial covering about 2-3 inches high, but they're up 6 inches to a foot.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's just almost like masked foliage, like somebody's yard that had been cut in 2 months.
Right. But, how cool is that? I'm so excited for you two to get together and see each other after all these years and
it's going to be
detecting. And Dorian, I'm going to be honest with you. If he doesn't get a Spanish silver, I'm going to be really disappointed in you. That's all. I'm just kidding.
Well, I know
there's just no guarantees. No guarantees.
Yeah,
no guarantees. But I know he'd sure like one, and I know where you're at. There's a real good chance he could find one.
Well, see, I was kind of hoping that I feel like that there are some out there on this trading post site that I hunted yesterday with my Simplex. But good grief, I was shocked when we got there. We had to walk about a half a mile from the car, and we get there, and I'm thinking, okay, there'll be 2-3 inches of maybe 4 inches of weeds. And that field hasn't been worked in 2 or 3 years. And it was covered with great big old tufts, clumps of grass that were up to my knees, and just there'd be little narrow pathways between them. If we'd had a smaller coil, it was kind of hard to find a lot of places to swing that 11-inch, but I still managed. Yeah. We still managed to get a few artifacts out of there, even into those negative conditions. But yeah, that was my prime place where I thought Dennis would get is cut silver. And I went to check it out. Was part of the reason I went there, but nope, that's not going to be it. I got to come up with another one, but that's okay. The cut coins are found all over this county at house sites, all over. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're in a really good area. I wish I could come back. I'd love to do it. I don't want to fly. That's not my thing. And it'd probably be better just you two for a while. But I do hope. I'm really hoping this fall, Dennis and I get to take a trip to Dayton area, do some Ohio hunting. When the crops are out, and of course, Dorian, if that happens, you have to find a way. For us to get together. You got to come up to the Dayton area. I'd love to hunt with the both of you.
We could probably arrange that. It shouldn't be a problem. The big problem is the question we're all sitting around wondering. Is it ever going to stop raining? Rained all day today. We had one day dry yesterday. Rained all day today, and it's going to be dry tomorrow, next day, then the rain comes right back again. And that's the way it keeps doing us.
Well, I think what's happened, you left Texas and you left some of your toughness behind, because I'm not judging. I'm just saying Dennis will go out there in the grass up to his chest and snakes and hot, super hot, wet. He's had mud up to his knees. I think you left Texas and you lose some of your toughness, evidently.
Whoa! Did you hear that, folks? This man is impugning my manhood.
No, I'll tell you what's funny though. I'm not going to give Dennis his age or anything, but I will say this: he's a big guy like me. He's a big guy, and man, that guy can go for a long time. He sure gets out there and hunts it, Dorian, and he sure can hang with us and Gypsy, and I'm fat and old too, but he's got some years on me. But I was really impressed with how much he can go, man. There's the last time we was out, it was hot and everything else, and he sure hangs in there awful good. He'll give you a run for your money. I think he'll keep you busy, keep you on your toes.
I'll tell you something in defense. All right. I'm 3 years older than he is, so
okay.
Let's wait until he's 72 and let's see how good.
Oh
he's
doing no! I'm not trying to make jokes. Right? I'm just saying I think he'll keep you busy and out in the fields hunting for a long time, and he gets it good, man. I sure have had fun with him. I don't think we talked about it. Did you know I went over there last week and I built him a set of headphones for his his Deus? Yeah, we built him a custom set of headphones. They need a little more work. He's getting some wind through the one ear cup, but that's no big deal. We're going to get him fixed, and we're going to build him a second backup pair. We're going to build him a second backup pair. I think he's pretty happy with them, but we'll. He said you got 5 years on him. He's 67.
Oh. Oh. Okay. I thought it was just 3.
When he comes to see you, we're going to need a lot of pictures and stories and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
I'm going to need that out of you guys. So
I'm hoping, Mike. I'm going to get boned up on my GoPro 3 camera, and I'm hoping we can actually make a video of our hunt together. That we can post. So
yeah, absolutely, that'd be cool. That'd be super cool. I'm excited for you guys. It's probably way overdue that you two get together.
Well, before we conclude, I wanted to ask you, how's Adam Sellers doing with his new tracked wheelchair? I haven't heard anything.
I haven't. He does come in and listen to the show, and I haven't got to talk to him too much, but he has posted a couple videos that are really neat. I need to reach out to him and talk to him because I want to do another article. But for everything I'm seeing, it's just going fantastic. And he's able to get around and get in the fields. And he's also a hunter. And it has opened everything up for him. So I'm really, really proud that we were able to do that. And I mean, Dirt Digest magazine, Mike and Craig just stepped up, and I'll tell you, I don't know if I've said this on air or anything. it was Craig's idea for me to reach out to him about an article. And then, talking to Adam, he wasn't looking to do this. How it came about, I said, do you ever get in field training? He goes, no, I really can't get my chair out there. I've done some research. I'd love to. He had went on a hunting trip, I think the year before or 2 years ago, and he said somebody let him borrow one of those track chairs, and we started talking about those. And I said, what do you think about trying to raise some money to get one? And he was kind of, he didn't know what to think about that at first. And I think he was all, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but maybe a little bit too embarrassed to ask for something like that. But I talked him into it. But after that, it was Mike and Craig with Dirt Digest magazine. I'll be real honest with you. Mike reached out to everybody, talked to other Facebook groups. That he helped to get the word out and contact the manufacturers who donated stuff. So I really can't take credit for that. I put it in their ear, and Mike really just took off with it and made it happen. And I'm so proud of him for doing that and for us to be able to do that, because I know it has helped him. I've seen a couple of his videos he's posted, and he's really enjoying it. But there will be another article come out in Dirt Digest magazine soon on that.
Okay. Yeah, great. Besides, we need Adam's input, because your buddy's going to need one of those track wheelchairs there before long.
We'll have to raise some money for you next, huh?
I'll tell you what. While you guys are shooting my manhood, your tough as nails hunting buddy. I offered to take him over to West Virginia and hunt Civil War on the side of a mountain. He said, nope, Steve Fells for him. He wants flat ground.
Well, he does have a hip issue, but he'll go all day, man. That day that we went out with Gypsy came up. I hurt my back was just killing me, and I probably only hunted half of the day. And the last site we went to, I was mostly sitting on a bench and trying to stretch it. I was just miserable. And Dennis was way out over in another field, and we'd already walked a lot and stuff. He gets around amazingly. He gets around like a younger guy for sure. So but I'm with him. I would guess being on the side of a hill and stuff, because he does, at the end of that day, his hip was bothering him. Almost every time we go out, by the end of the day, his hip's pretty, he's walking a little funny and stuff, but I'll tell you what, he's tough. He's a tough old bird.
Yeah, you're right. And we're just teasing here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, heck, I'm 44, and I get out for the day, and my back and shoulders have been so messed up, and I've got a knee that gives me problems now. It's getting old, Gypsy, I'll tell you something funny. Gypsy's, I'm not going to tell Gypsy's age. You don't ever tell a woman's age. I don't want to die.
But living dangerous.
Let's just say Gypsy's a little older than me, and her and I just had a conversation the other day, and we were laughing so hard. And I said, Gypsy, we're not young anymore. Because Gypsy grew up much like probably you did and Dennis did. And she was always kind of a tomboy. She was out in the woods and playing in the creeks and, we talked about how we'd walk real far and explore the creeks. And she was telling me a story that something happened recently. And I'm like, Gypsy, we're not, teenagers anymore. What were you thinking? And we just laughed, because you don't realize your age is catching up to you, and you got these aches and pains from, earlier. I'll tell you something funny. I played football all through high school, and I was a lineman, and I used to get fractures in my hands. Every game, my hands were purple and bruised.
Wow.
And I had a couple fractures, and I went to the doctor. The last one, he goes, by the time you're 30, you're going to have arthritis in these hands so bad. But you don't think about that when you're 16, 17 years old. But I was walking around today, and I couldn't hardly move them, and I thought, man, just the stuff that comes back to you later. When you're young, you don't care. You're tough and invincible, but boy, it catches up to you, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
I just, I was thinking as I come out of the woods yesterday. Well, we had to walk through a couple patches of woods to get to the field, and I was thinking, okay, I did real good. Didn't feel any stress or strain on my heart, and I was moving and swinging the whole time we were there and everything, and then I started walking back to the truck, and so I probably walked most of a mile in that field, and we walked a half mile getting there and a half mile back to the truck, and we had to walk along a railroad track with big chunks of granite gravel, and that the tracks rest on, and it was kind of hard walking. But man, when I got back towards the truck, I thought, wow, I don't have the energy reserves I used to have. I must be getting old.
Yeah, that's funny, right? Yep, it happens. I mean, at 44, there's times I feel it. It's like, wow, and I remember, my grandfather told me a lot of things, and he was right about all of them, but take care of your body. It catches up to you. Growing old isn't for the weak, and you got to take care of your body. I can remember one time somebody bet me, I was helping somebody move, and they said, I bet you can't pick that washer up by yourself. And I bear hugged it and I carried it out to the truck. Well, I didn't get hurt, but I look back at those things and think, stupid stuff like that we did took a toll on us. I want to say Steve Adams said, Gypsy's still digging and you two at the truck, at the truck, as she wore us out. Steve, I want to make a correction. That is not what happened. What happened was Dennis and I were sitting on a bench, leaning up against each other, sweating and wore out, and she was hunting. But we weren't back at the truck, Steve. So don't.
That's a really important difference there.
Yeah. We weren't at the truck. We were sitting on a bench, leaning up against each other, trying to hold each other up. Get it right. But all right, we're going to call it a show. We're running out of time anyhow, but Dorian, another great show. And like I said, I don't know if people have reached out to you. I've had a lot of people reach out to me, and they really like the first one. I'm sure this one will do just as good. And some people in chat were already making comments how neat it was that there was pictures to go along with the story and stuff. So wonderful job.
Good. I wanted some feedback on that. I wanted to know if that was really effective, if that really added to the program.
While you were still talking and telling your story, somebody said, and I don't remember who it was now, said, "Great show tonight, Dorian and Mike." And I kind of laughed to myself, just because I'm on here, like, this isn't my show tonight. You got to, if you want to thank anybody, you're going to have to thank Dorian, because I'm just here tuning in like the rest of you and learning and listening. So,
Mike, you're pulling an Andrew Carnegie. You know who Andrew Carnegie was?
No, tell me.
Andrew Carnegie was a very famous U.S. philanthropist. And he was a billionaire, and he donated money and built libraries all over this country.
Wow.
You'll see Andrew Carnegie libraries. They have.
Yeah, I've heard of him now that you mention that. Yeah.
Well, anyway, he was being interviewed by a newspaper man, and the newspaper man was praising him for the brilliance, because he owned multiple industries. He owned giant corporations and things, and basically was the chief operating officer for all these different organizations or companies that he owned. And this reporter was praising him for his brilliance, and he says, and he asked him, he said, but how do you manage to, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't remember the exact words, but it was something to the effect, how do you manage to keep all of this organized and working so smoothly? And Andrew Carnegie looked at him and said something to the effect of, well, it's really very simple. I surround myself with people smarter than I am.
Right, right. Well, I think that's very well put. I think, I mean,
I'm just kidding.
your vast knowledge and what you share. I know Monday night, Gypsy and Amanda have a very popular show that a lot of people enjoy. They're real good about getting guests and stuff, and I think people like the guest. And I'm so happy we can kind of offer two different things, because you and I don't do as many guests.
Yeah.
We do a lot more. Really, I mean, most of our shows are you talking, and I'm okay with that. I don't have to be the smart one or the one with the best stories and stuff. I enjoy it, and it's about. I mean, really, I mean, don't get me wrong. I have my nights where I talk metal detectors or whatever, but I love when you kind of get excited about something and you wanted to do the show on Jesse James, and you kind of lit up. And there's nothing I want more than for you to talk about stuff that you know and have studied and love that excites you, because everybody that reaches out to me talks about how knowledgeable you are and how lucky we are to have somebody with your vast experience and knowledge. And I agree with them 100%. And I'm, hey, if I'm only known for putting the people in place, I'm okay with that. I'm glad that I've been able to get such good people, and we're running out of time, but I'd love to talk some night about how we met, because I'll never forget seeing your post, and I thought, I got to give this guy a call. I just got to do it. But we'll talk about that another time.
Okay. Yeah, and let me point out something here, folks. I do not have an inexhaustible supply of shows like this. I don't.
Right.
It's going to come to an end, Mike, and we're going to have to get some guests in here.
Yeah, absolutely. We will, and we will do that. And we'll change it up. I mean, there's plenty going on, and the metal detecting community is constantly changing. New detectors and new stuff. I mean, we'll always have something to talk about, so we'll get it done. But do you want to try to do that show next week, the part 3?
Yeah. Now, we had talked about, I don't know if Keith's listening. Keith, if you're out listening out there, you told me you'd be busy till May. Well, it's May, and we want to get you back on the show.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I'll reach out to him, but if I don't want to. Do you want to do the show next week and me try to get him for the following week, or do you want me to get a hold of him and see if he wants to do it this coming week, and then let's
get him for week after next if he's available, because I kind of stopped right in the middle of part of this story. I'd like to not wait too long to get back in there and finish that.
I'd like that too. So, okay, that's the plan. Well, everybody tune in next week and we'll do part 3 and wrap this up.
Yep.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.